Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. A very warm welcome to the fourth and the final day of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Webinar to Success for Exams in September 2022. And I am your tutor, Kashif Kamran. Now, the agenda for the fourth and the final day is to investigate the question number 3 of the mock exam. Now, we've already investigated the first and the second one using the practice platform. And along with the practice, I have also focused on the marking scheme and how you can increase the prospects of gaining the 20 professional marks. Now, one final discussion today, the question 3 comes in focus, and another final discussion on professional marks and a final wind up of this webinar comes today. Now, just before starting the day 4, a quick reinforcement of what we have done yesterday and in the webinar. Just a quick recap. The third day yesterday was focused on the question number 2 from the mock exam, where the focus was on review of prospective financial information. We did investigate the matters in agreeing the terms of engagement, and I did give you the marking scheme for that question. We then went to performing procedures on the prospective financial information, and I give you the marking scheme and how you can write a good procedure on a prospective financial information. And I concluded down with the implication on the assurance report, where we give a diplomatic answer in terms of a qualified opinion and an adverse opinion. Now, from that to today, the final day, the day 4, let's see what is the focus. Look inside the question 3 of the September 22 mock exam, available on the practice platform by ACCA. Now, the question 3, as I guided you in my day 1 of the webinar, that one of the question in the section B has to be from syllabus area E. And the question 3 in the mock exam is from the syllabus area E. It is set at the completion and reporting stage, which is basically the syllabus area E. And one of the questions has to be from it. So you're very sure when you go to the exam hall, right? You're very sure what is to be examined in the question 1. And you're very sure what will be examined in one of the question of section B. Now, with that surety, still, if you are unable to pass the AAA paper, there is some issues with the preparation you have undertaken for the paper. Your section E has to be very strong, and your syllabus area D has to be very strong, because these are fundamental areas which impact on your success in the AAA paper. So, syllabus area E, let's see what the question focused on in the mock exam. The question focused on commenting on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. We know that's a typical question which comes quite regular in the past paper. If you have practice papers from September 18 onwards, you must have seen this question coming a couple of times, commenting on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. Second, the examiner asked for procedures. You all know how to write procedures. You must be knowing my mnemonic, CASP. Then matters to be considered. The question asked for matters to be considered, and it was a question set at the reporting stage, completion stage. So the matters in a question has to be the accounting matters. And whenever you are considering the accounting matters, you are commenting on the accounting matters, you are basically writing an answer which looks very similar to a risk of material misstatement. You comment on the materiality, you comment on the accounting treatment, you comment on the risk, you comment on the impact, what is understated and what is overstated. So exactly, it looks like a risk of material misstatement answer when you're commenting on the matters to be considered, and the matters are the accounting matters. I'll be giving a more clarification once I start writing them. Then the examiner asked for what adjustments you will be making to the financial statement if an accounting treatment is wrong. Adjustment in terms of if you believe an accounting treatment is wrong, then what should be debited and what should be credited. So you must be knowing the accounting entry, what to debit and what to credit. That is what the examiner was looking for. And finally, the implication for the audit report? What will be the impact on the audit report? Yesterday in the question 2, we were looking at the impact on the assurance report, which was for the prospective financial information. Today, we are looking at the impact on the audit report. So quite a diversified question focusing on evidence, procedures, commenting on the matters, adjustments, and implication for the audit report. And that's the beauty of the completion stage, because at a completion stage, we don't only have a reporting question, we also have a question on evidence. We can also have a question on going concern. We can also have a question on communication of matters to those charged with governance. So it's quite a big stage, right? When you look at a completion and a reporting stage, and you should have a clear idea for it. Let's open the question on the platform. Let's investigate the question and let's drill the answer and understand the marking scheme and what to write. Let's open the exercise. Okay, let me open the practice platform. Can you all see the practice platform in front of your screen? The question number 3 from the September 22 mock exam. Can you see this in front of your screen? Is that visible? Please confirm so we can proceed further. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, now what you do every time, I guided you this in the question 1. I guided you this in question 2. And now I am finally guiding you in the question 3. First of all, you read the screen on the right. Then you open up the response option, the word processor, and then you open up the requirement. And you read the requirement, you copy paste the requirement in the word processor, and then you start linking the requirements with the exhibit given on the left-hand side of the screen. So try to reinforce the steps. So the first step is to read the screen you have on the right, this one. So let's read what's the screen on the right. It is the 1st of July. You are a manager in the D. Orwell company, and you have just been placed in charge of the audit of the Weddell company for the year ended 31st of March 20X5, which is nearing completion. So the audit of the Weddell company on which you have been assigned as a manager is nearing completion. So syllabus area E. Weddell is a print supplier to business, printing catalogs, leaflets, training manuals, and stationery to order. So that's the nature of the business. It specializes in using 100% recyclable paper. So the company specializes in 100% recyclable papers in its printing and sustainable packaging for its distribution, which is a key selling point and heavily promoted in advertisement. The manager previously assigned to the audit of Weddell has been moved to another urgent assignment, and you have been assigned to take the role of the manager for the remainder of the audit. So you have just come in an emergency situation as a manager. The manager who was previously assigned to Weddell has to be put on another engagement, and you have been assigned to the role of the manager for the remainder audit. So for the remaining audit, you have to be the manager. Materiality has been set at 800,000 for assets and liabilities. So examiner is already giving you the threshold of materiality, so you need not to calculate the materiality. Anything which is above 800,000 for an asset and a liability will be considered material, and anything less than 800,000 for asset and liability will be considered immaterial. So the threshold is given, and 250,000 for income and expenses. So if you are commenting on any item of income or any item of expenses, any income or any expense which is more than $250,000 will be considered material. Any income and any expense less than $250,000 will be considered immaterial. So the threshold is given. So anything above the threshold will be material. Anything below the threshold will be immaterial. You're not calculating the materiality, right? You're just commenting on the materiality. Is that clear to all of you? So the materiality levels are assigned. You just need to comment whether something is material or not in relevance with the threshold given to you by the examiner. So the information on the right-hand side of the screen is telling us that I have been assigned on a temporary basis as a manager for the remaining audit. The client name is Weddell. Weddell is nearing completion. The critical success factor of Weddell is 100% recyclable paper. and the liability and the materiality has been set for assets and income and expenses. Now, the examiner is saying the following exhibits are given on the left-hand side of the screen, and that's what you need to use. We'll open one by one each of the exhibits and we start reading. Now, the next step after you read the screen on the right, you open the word processor immediately, because you need to structure your answer in the word processor. So you open the word processor and immediately you open the requirements. So 2 windows at a time, right? Not more than 2 windows. Otherwise, things will become too clustered for you. So 2 windows at a time, and that's how you would be going about. I hope you can see the two windows right on your screen. Okay, now I'm just putting my camera off because we are into the phase of analysis. Okay, I'm just copying the requirements A and B from here, like this, A and B. And I copy the requirements to my word processor. I choose the heading number 2, and I say answer to question 3. I hope you're learning this from every day, right? This is the same steps I undertake every day. First, I read the screen on the right. Then I open the word processor and the requirements. I will copy the requirements in the word processor. I will break the requirements, structure my requirements, and then start connecting them with the exhibits. And that's the approach you have to take in the real exam as well. So answer to question 2, and I copy paste A and B. Okay, and in the A, I have A1 and I have A2. So a couple of things to be done in A, A1 and A2. And in the case of B, I only have one requirement. Right, so that's how you have to go with. Sorry, answer to the question number 3, not 2, sorry. Okay, now let's see what the examiner is telling us. Using the exhibit 1. So for the requirement A, you are not going to exhibit 2, you're only looking at exhibit 1. So for the requirement A, I will only be focused on exhibit 1. What I need to do in exhibit 1, comment on the sufficiency of the evidence obtained. So whether the evidence obtained by the audit team is sufficient or not. So I am a manager, right? And I'm looking at the work performed by the audit team. So I need to comment on the work performed by the audit team, that whether the work performed is sufficient or not. And this is important. Now, this is exactly what I keep guiding students every time, that it is so very important that you read the requirement in the exam carefully. Wherever you find a comma or wherever you find and, be very careful, because examiner is not asking you one thing, rather 2 things. So what is the first thing the examiner is asking us? Comment on the sufficiency of the evidence obtained. That's the first thing, Control C. So that's the first thing examiner is asking us. What is the second thing the examiner is asking? And recommend any further procedures. Recommend any further procedures necessary. So what further procedures are necessary? Because if you tell that the evidence gathered is insufficient, suppose you comment on the evidence and you say the evidence is insufficient, which it will be, then if the evidence is insufficient, what further will you do? Further means something extra, something not done by the audit team. Look at this word here, further. Further means you cannot repeat something done in the case study. You need to write something extra which has not been done in the case study. Recommend further audit procedure. So I need to comment on the sufficiency, and number 2, I need to recommend further procedures. So 2 things for the part 1. Okay, now I will remove my requirement and I come to the second requirement. In the second requirement, the examiner wants me to comment on the matters to be considered. Now, this is a completion and a reporting stage question, right? So in a completion and reporting stage question, when the examiner is saying comment on the matters have to be accounting matters, right? There is a question which comes comment on the matters which should be communicated to those charged with governance. That's a different question, right? That's a question which reflects ISA 260 and 265. But this is a question which is not telling you whether these matters are to be communicated to DCWG. It's simply a blank question. It's saying comment on the matters. Which matters? Full stop. No, examiner is not telling which matters. Is the examiner explaining which matters? No. Matters to be considered. Now you will ask, which matters to be considered? Now, in a completion and reporting stage question, these are the accounting matters. So comment on the accounting matters to be considered in the exhibit 1, and then look at the and. Again, an and coming in. Explain any adjustments necessary to the financial statement. What adjustments will be necessary to the financial statement if an accounting treatment is wrong? Examiner is not saying impact on the audit report. Examiner is saying adjustments to the financial statement. So two things, right? Number one, comment on the matters to be considered. That's the third part you have to do for the part A. And the fourth part you have to do for part A is explain any adjustments that may be necessary. Control C and Control V. So 4 things is to be done for requirement A. And how many marks we have for the whole requirement A? 16 marks in total. Now, everything you do is worth 1 mark. Comment on the sufficiency. We know the marking scheme for the comment on the sufficiency is 1 mark per comment. Recommend procedures, 1 mark per procedure. Comment on the matters. Every matter commented on is worth 1 mark. 1 mark per comment on matter. And explain any adjustment, 1 mark per adjustment. So everything is worth 1 mark. So this question is worth how many marks? 16. So in total, under the 4 headings, accumulative under the 4 headings, how many points I should have? I should have 16 points. Now, in a certain headings, the points will be more. In a certain headings, the point will be less, but there will be no 0 point. You will not leave any heading blank. But the total number of points you will be writing in accumulation of the 4 headings will be how many? 16. So that is how you will fetch the 16 marks for the exhibit number 1, requirement A. Now tell me honestly, is that critical that to break the requirement? Now, when we break the requirement, we got to know that examiner is not just asking us 1 thing, examiner is asking us 4 things. Are you clear for this? Everyone? So we have 4 headings, right? We have 4 headings in requirement A, and the 4 headings are in front of your screen. So please, reading the requirements is extremely important. I hope you got benefit of that. Okay, let's look at the last requirement and then start answering the question. The B requirement. In the B requirement, the examiner is telling us, using the information in exhibit 2. So the B requirement, we only have to use the information in exhibit 2, not 1. So there is a particular exhibit we have to focus on, exhibit number 2. Discuss the implication for the audit report. What is the impact on the audit report on the basis that no further adjustments have been made to the financial statements in relation to the matters discussed above, requirement number A. So management is not making any adjustment to any matter discussed in exhibit number 1 above. So 4 marks. Discuss the implication for the audit report if no adjustment is made to any of the matters above. So this is plural, right? So is management making any adjustment? No. So auditor will give an accumulative impact on the audit report, an aggregate impact on the audit report. Look at the marks. The marks are 4. So the 4 marks also tells us this is an aggregate. You have to give an aggregate impact on audit report. Because I think in this question, there are 3 misstatements. An examiner is saying if the management is not adjusting any of the misstatements above, what is the impact on the audit report? So this question is going on an aggregate impact on the report, not on an individual impact on the report. So you have to give the aggregate impact here, right? So exhibit 2, discuss the implication for the audit report. Discuss the implication for the audit report. Control X, and that's what we are doing in this requirement. And we have 4 marks for this. So So that's what we are doing in this second requirement. Okay, now see, we structured things down and we know exactly what is to be done. Once we answer the question, we'll remove exhibit 1 and marks from here. We'll remove the individual marks from here, and the answer starts looking tidy. Now you close the requirements. You don't need the requirements anymore. Professional marks will be awarded for the 3 skills: analysis, evaluation and judgment, and commercial acumen. You know the 3 skills which are in section B. So we'll try ensuring at the end of the answer how much of the skills have been demonstrated. Let's go down and start constructing the answer. Let's open the exhibit number 1, where we have to comment on the sufficiency of the evidence, procedures. Number 2, procedures, evidence, matters to be considered, and explaining any adjustment. Okay, let's see what is in exhibit number 1. Let's open the exhibit 1. Okay, now you can see the exhibit number 1 on screen. And in the exhibit number 1, how many matters are there? Let's see. There is a matter relating to inventory, number 1. There is a matter relating to legal claim, number 2. And there is a matter relating to a legal claim 2. And there is a matter relating to director loan 3. Now, all 3 are accounting matters. A director loan looks like a related party transaction. A legal claim looks like IS 37, and inventory look like as IS 2. So, following matters. And what we have to do, we have to comment on the matters. Now, for every matter, what we have to do, tell me. For every matter, we have to do 4 things. First of all, for inventory, we have to comment on the sufficiency of the evidence obtained. For inventory, we have to recommend the procedures. For inventory, we have to comment on the matters. And for inventory, we have to explain the adjustments. Then you come to the second one, legal claim. For the legal claim, you have to do the 4 things, the same 4 things for the legal claim. The same 4 things for the legal claim. And then the same 4 things for director loan. Now look at the 16 marks you have. It's not much, because under every matter, you first will comment on the sufficiency, then you will comment on the further procedures, then you will comment on the matters to be considered, and then you will be commenting on any adjustments that may be necessary. So under the legal claim, you will have the 4 headings like this: 1, 2, 3, and 4. And under the director report, again, you will have the 4 headings, same. So you have to structure the answer very well. That's even part of your professional marks, that you need to make the life of your marker easy. We did discuss that on the day 1, making the life of your marker easy, who is checking the paper. Now look at the format of the answer, how good this is looking. Inventory, 4 things. Legal claim, 4 things. Director report, 4 things. Sorry, director loan, 4 things. Is everyone clear with the structuring of the answer before we start reading inventory, legal claim, and director loan? Is everyone clear? Great. Now, how many times at home you do this? How many times at home you break the requirement, you segregate the requirement, you structure your answer in a beautiful way that, okay, this is I need to do, this is I need to do, this is I need to do, and then you start reading the exhibits. Because till the time you're not structuring the word processor, you are not enjoying reading the exhibits. You will enjoy reading the exhibits if you have structured the word processor very well. You just need to copy paste the information from inventory under the 4 headings. Let's do an example of inventory. I'll do 1 matter, right? You do the rest yourself. I'm doing inventory. I'll be brainstorming the others, but not writing others. You will be writing legal claim and director loan yourself on the basis of my brainstorming, but I will be writing the answer for inventory as a whole. Now, we have 16 marks in total. So I think if we keep 5 marks for inventory, 5 marks for legal claim, and 5 marks for director loan, that makes it 15, right? So there might be a case that you have more points in inventory or more points in legal claim, and you say, okay, I'm keeping 6 points for inventory, for example. So you can keep like 5 to 6 points for inventory. You can keep 5 to 6 points for legal claim. And same goes with the director loan. I think there's less to write on director loan. So for sure, you can keep the 5 marks for director loan. And not necessarily you are keeping equal point on each. You can even keep 4 marks for director loan, and you can keep the remaining 12 marks for inventory and legal claim. In total, there has to be 16 points, irrespective how many marks you keep for inventory or legal claim or director loan. But in total, there has to be 16 points in your answer. Okay, let's open the reading of inventory. Audit procedures performed at the inventory count indicated that the printed inventory items with a cost of $130,000 were potentially obsolete. So $130,000 of inventory was potentially obsolete. Now, one thing which I would like to copy from here is the materiality, because every time we have to refer back that something is material or not. So I just copy the statement of materiality. I go back to my word processor, and right under the exhibit 1, I write my statement of materiality. So I need not to go back again to the main page. Okay, so first of all, we were looking at the cost of $130,000 was potentially obsolete. So is this a matter? Comment on the matters. Is it material? On an individual basis, this is not material, because $130,000 is less than $800,000 for an asset and liability. $130,000 is the part of balance sheet, and $130,000 is part of cost of sales. So it's even less than the income. It's even less than the assets, right? So is it immaterial? Yes. So comment on the matter. The first comment on the matter. Cost of $130,000. Control V. Just let me segregate the answer. Give me just 1 minute before I take it to my Word file. 4 things, and you're getting the first comment. Just 1 minute, right? Completion matters. Cost of $130,000 is obsolete. Control C. And this is my first point under comment on the matters. We'll just stretch the answer once we complete reading the case study. Okay, these items were mainly out-of-date training manuals. The inventory has not been written off. So has the management written off the inventory for the obsolete inventory? No. So what is the adjustment needed? Inventory has not been written off, as it is believed that the paper on which the items are printed can be recycled in future. So that is what the management is claiming. We need to be skeptical, right? We need to exercise skeptical mindset to earn professional marks. This is a claim of management. The auditor is concluding that these are obsolete, but the management is saying we are not writing it off because we believe the items can be recycled and can be used again in future. Now that's the statement of the management. Control C, adjustments necessary. The management has not written off the inventory. Inventory has not been written off. Next, however, the items appear not to be recyclable as they're coated in plastic. So the auditor is saying because they're coated in plastic, they're not recyclable. So we have to go with the view of the auditor, or we have to go with the view of the management. How would you demonstrate the skeptical mindset in the paper? Will you challenge the auditor statement, or will you challenge the management statement? The management statement, right? So the auditor is saying the materials are coated in plastic, so they cannot be recycled. So inventory should be written off. Now, if you are writing off the inventory, what will you debit? You will debit the cost of sales, and you will credit the inventory, right? I hope that is the right accounting entry, right? Because you're writing off the inventory, so you will credit the inventory and debit the cost of sales. So they are not recyclable, and that is the reason they have to be written off. Next, the junior who performed the audit work on inventory has requested a written representation from the management to confirm that the items can be recycled and no further procedure relevant to items have been performed. Now, what have we done on inventory? We have just done a inventory count, number one. And number two, what have we done? We have requested a written representation from the management to confirm whether the items are recyclable or not. And obviously, it's a management representation, so management will say they are recyclable. Management will tell their claim that they are recyclable. Do you believe this is sufficient amount of work on inventory by the junior? So 2 comments. Number 1, there was just an inventory count, no other procedures. 1. Second, audit work on inventory has requested a representation from the management that whether the items are recyclable or not, any further work has not been done. Control V, and that completes the question. Now see what information we have to write the answer. Is everyone clear with the case? Can I take this to my Word file? I hope you can see the Word file, right? I'm just copy pasting this on my Word file. Let's start writing the answer. Now in the first exhibit 1, we have been given the materiality level by the examiner. Now we are working on the first area, which is inventory. And the first thing we need to do on inventory is to comment on the sufficiency of the evidence. Then we have to work on the procedures. Then we have to work on the comment on the matters. And then finally, we have to work on the adjustments necessary. So let's go one by one and wrap up the answer. And I hope you understand things in a better way. Okay, let's go one by one. Okay, the first thing, comment on the sufficiency of the evidence obtained. See how I would be writing an answer. The representation alone is not a sufficient audit evidence. It's not a sufficient audit evidence as representation from the management. Representation alone is not a sufficient audit evidence as representation cannot be a substitute of the evidence directly obtained by the audit team. So you are commenting on the sufficiency, right? You're saying representation alone is not sufficient because a representation cannot be a substitute of the evidence directly obtained by the auditor. You must have corresponded with a recycling expert, or you must have corresponded with someone who is involved in recycling, and you could have communicated with an expert and asked the expert whether the materials coated in plastic are recyclable or not. But you didn't perform anything. Rather, you just went to the management and asked them, can you give me a representation? Did you corresponded with an expert? Did you ask an expert whether the plastic coated materials are recyclable? Did you ask someone in the company that in past whether such materials have been recycled? What is the past practices? Whether the company has recycled such materials in past? You didn't performed anything. You just relied on a representation letter. That is why the examiner is saying recommend further procedures. So representation alone is not sufficient as representation cannot be a substitute of the evidence obtained directly by the audit team. The audit team should had performed procedures on whether the plastic coated materials are recyclable or not. The audit team should have performed procedures on whether the plastic coated materials are recyclable or not on an independent basis. That you didn't. So that's my 1 mark. Second, apart from inventory count and the representation letter as discussed above, no further work has been performed on inventory. No further work has been performed on inventory. No further work has been performed on inventory, like working on inventory valuation, etc. Apart from inventory count and the representation letter, no further work has been performed on inventory, like working on inventory valuation, etc. The amount of work on inventory is insufficient. So you just did two things, right? Nothing else, 1 mark. Then you come writing the procedures. The first procedure, which I guess would be here because we commented on that above, my first procedure would be, which is further procedure, which is not in the case study. My first procedure, number 1, would be correspond with the management, correspond with an expert in recycling, to confirm whether the plastic coated materials are recyclable or not. Number 2, you can also discuss with management any instances in past where such plastic coated materials have been recycled. 2 procedures, getting 2 marks. Comment on the methods. Now, my first comment on the method is the potentially obsolete inventory, worth $130,000 is immaterial to the assets and is immaterial to the assets and expenses on individual basis. On an aggregate basis, it could become material, right? So the potentially obsolete inventory worth $130,000 is immaterial to the asset and expenses on individual basis as per the threshold for materiality given in the exam, in the case scenario, full stop. 1 mark. Comment on the meta. Accounting treatment. Now you need to write, you can write this, right? That if it could become material on a combined basis later, but this is fine, right? That on an individual basis, currently this is immaterial. That's a fine sentence, right? Okay, second, comment on the meta. The inventory which is obsolete should be written off at the lower of cost and the net realizable value. The inventory which is obsolete should be written off at the lower of cost or the net realizable value, and the management should accordingly adjust the financial statements, which we will be writing second, number 1, 2. So comment on the matter is the first, materiality. The second comment on the matter is the accounting treatment, that if the inventory is obsolete, it should be written off. So that is the accounting treatment. Third, explain any adjustments. The financial statements should be adjusted for the obsolete inventory, which in view of the auditor, is not recyclable because it's coated in plastic, And did we demonstrated our skeptical mind by corresponding with an expert. And if an expert confirms they are not recyclable, then the management opinion is wrong. So to counter the management opinion and to demonstrate your skeptical mindset, you already corresponded with an expert. So the financial statement should be adjusted for the obsolete inventory, which in view of the auditor is not recyclable because it's coated in plastic, by debiting the cost of sales and crediting the inventory. So you put the accounting entry, full stop, adjustments necessary, 1 mark, and you remove all other information. Now look at my answer. This is my answer for inventory. So I read the information and I'm now translating my answer on inventory. I hope you can see this on your screen now. Just let me format, put a very proper format for this, and we get down. Look at my headings. Comment on the sufficiency of the evidence. And I wrote 2 paragraphs under that, 2 marks. Recommend procedures. I wrote 2 procedures, 2 marks, 4. Comment on the matters. I wrote 2 matters, 6. And I wrote 1 adjustment, 7. So almost took 7 out of 16 marks just on inventory. Right. So is everyone clear with how to go with 4 headings? Is that easier? Explaining any adjustments? Is comment on the matters clear to all of you? Is recommending procedures clear to all of you? And is comment on the sufficiency of the evidence clear to all of you? I will just be brainstorming the other requirements, and I will prefer you write the remaining answer yourself. So it also becomes a practice for you, because primarily it's a mock exam, right? So you have to do it. So on the basis of the guidance of inventory, can you stretch the answer for legal claim and other parts? Let me do the brainstorming, right? Because I have to do the reporting part with you. And for that, I need to have the brainstorming very well. Okay, let's see what is happening in the legal claim, and then you can wrap up the answer. Okay, let's go back. Because we need to write off the inventory, right? So when we need to write off the inventory, then in that case, we need to debit the cost of sales, right? And we need to credit the inventory, because any adjustment in the valuation of inventory will affect the closing inventory, right? Will affect the closing inventory. And is closing inventory part of cost of sales? Yes. So please, whoever was asking this question, you need to revisit your accounting entries. Closing inventory and the closing inventory valuation is part of the cost of sales, right? Okay, let's do the legal claim quickly. Let's go back to the practice platform. I hope you can see that on your screen. Let's do a quick brainstorming of the legal claim, and you have to write the answer yourself. Weddell Company is involved in a court case with a competitor. Okay. Scotia Company, which allege that a design used in Weddell Company printed material is a copy of the Scotia Company design, which are protected under copyright. So it's a copyright case. Scotia believe that Weddell copied their design, and they have filed a case against Weddell. The only evidence the audit team has obtained is a verbal confirmation from Weddell lawyer that the claim of $125,000 against Weddell, which they believe is probable to be paid. So you just took a verbal confirmation. Now tell me, is verbal confirmation a sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Number 1, is verbal evidence a sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Point number 1, no. And what about $125,000? Is $125,000 individually material? Is $125,000 individually material? If you look at the operating, if you look at the income and expenses, it's $250,000. And if you look at the asset, it's $800,000. So on an individual basis, this is immaterial, just like inventory. And the verbal confirmation is an issue which you will be writing on comment on the sufficiency. You should have, what will you write in the further procedure? In the further procedure, you will write correspond in writing correspond in writing with a legal advisor, right? To confirm the probability or to confirm the outcome of the case, whether it is probable to be paid or possible to be paid. So the lawyer that a claim of $125,000 has been made against Weddle, which they believe is probable. So who is believing it is probable? Lawyer. And probable means, should a provision be recognized? Should we recognize the provision? So the lawyer is saying it's probable to be paid. So when you look at the word probable, immediately you think about ICE 37 and you think about is equal to a provision. So it's probable to be paid, right? And who is telling us? The lawyer. Mawson Ross, the chief executive officer, has not recognized a provision in the financial statement. Is that wrong? Should he recognize a provision? So what adjustment is needed in the financial statement? No provision is recognized. So what adjustment is needed? No provision is recognized. So what adjustment is needed in the financial statement? For recording the provision, you will debit the operating expenses, and you will credit the liabilities, right? Am I correct? Is that the adjustment that is needed in the financial statement? So currently is the financial statement materially is currently the financial statement misstated? Currently, the financial statement is misstated as expenses and liabilities are understated. You can also write this point in the inventory, right? In inventory, it was $130,000. So you can also write the same point in inventory, that the financial statements are misstated as currently the expenses and inventory. I think inventory was overstated and expenses were understated. Is that clear, everyone? So the director is not recognizing the financial the provision, arguing this is immaterial. Should the director look at materiality of things? Is he the auditor? The management should be recognizing things irrespective of whether it is material or immaterial. Auditor performs audit on a material basis, right? Auditor looks at things on material basis, right? Yes, it is a verbal confirmation. So what will you write in the further procedures? In the further procedures, you will write correspond with lawyer in writing. So verbal is the mistake, right? So you will overcome the mistake by writing a further procedure. That's the reason examiner is giving you verbal, right? But on the basis of verbal, at least one thing is confirmed, that it is probable. So if it is probable, then a provision should be recognized. So will you challenge the opinion of Mawson? Will you criticize Mawson? Will you demonstrate your skeptical mindset here? What if the Mawson is doing this for a sake of window dressing the financial statement? He's not recognizing the provision. Mawson refused to our request to ask the lawyer to confirm their opinion on the matter in writing. See, he's denying to confirm in writing from the lawyer, saying it is not worth bothering the lawyer again on such trivial matters. Look at the statement of Mawson. You need to be very critical of Mawson. You need to be very critical of the behavior of Mawson. He's not adjusting the financial statements, and he's not even bothered about asking the lawyer in writing. So will you be corresponding with the lawyer in writing? Because Mawson is saying, I will not be corresponding with the lawyer in writing because it's about bothering the lawyer again and again. Is that correct? So will you be able to write the answer for legal claim? Is everyone sound and clear? Can you write further procedures like corresponding with lawyer in writing? Can you comment on the sufficiency verbal? Can you comment on the matter that it is individually immaterial? And can you comment on the matter that as per ICE 37, a provision should be recognized because it has a probable outflow? Can you write the accounting treatment and the adjustment? Is that clear to all of you? Okay, great. Last part, director loan, because you have to do this yourself, right? This part has to go up, right? Because we were writing this for the legal claim, sorry. And this all was written for the legal claim. Okay, let's go down with the director loan. Weddle Company made a loan of $600,000 to Mawson Ross in March 20X5. So Weddell Company made a loan of $600,000 to Mawson Ross. Now, will you look at the materiality, $800,000 to $50,000? Tell me, will you relate this with $800,000 and $250,000? No, this is a related party transaction, which is material by nature. So $600,000 loan to Mawson Ross, the first point. So what will you do? $600,000 loan to Mawson is equal to material by nature. Material by nature is equal to a related party transaction. So when you're commenting on the accounting treatment, will you comment this is a related party transaction? Will you comment that a related party transaction should be disclosed in the notes to the financial statement, right? So a loan, material. The amount is recognized as a current asset at a fair value. Okay, that's fine. The loan carries an interest rate of 4%, which has been confirmed to the market rate for short-term loans, and have been concluded that the loan is at the terms equivalent to an arm length transaction. Mawson has provided written confirmation that the loan will be repaid by 31st of October. The only, sorry, what is the year end? In March, we got this loan. In March, we got this loan. And what's the year end of the company? The year end of the company is, just one second. The year end of the company is 31st of March. Okay, the year end of the company is 31st of March. Okay. So we got this loan in March 20X5, and you will be repaying it in 31st of October 20X5. So it's fine. This is a current asset. The only other audit work performed was to agree the cash payment to cash book. Details of the loan have not been disclosed in the financial statement. Detail of the loan has not been disclosed in the financial statements. Is that a adjustment? Detail of loan has not been disclosed in the financial statement. Financial statements should be adjusted by giving a complete disclosure of a related party transaction, by giving a complete disclosure of related party transaction, complete disclosure of related party transaction. Thus, the financial statements at present are materially misstated. Now we can write materially misstated. So it's a related party transaction, right? And the related party transaction has not been disclosed. It's material by nature. We are not concerned about $600,000. I think further procedures which you can do here is you can review the terms of loan, for confirming the amount of loan, the interest rate. So if the loan has been given to Mawson, you can review the term of loan to confirm the amount of loan and the interest rate, not just confirming the interest rate to the market rate, because it is a related party transaction, so the interest rate can be different from the market rate. Because, mostly the related party transactions are not an arm length transaction. It's quite fine that the market rate of interest is 6%, and you offered the interest rates to Mawson at 4%, because this is a related party transaction. So it's better to review the term of loan to confirm the amount of loan given to Mawson and the interest rate. Further, you can also review the board minutes for the approval of the loan to the CEO. Now, not look at the $6,000 saying, why would the board approve $600,000? It's a petty amount. It's not a petty amount. It's a loan to a CEO. Look at the position. So if something has been dispersed to a CEO, it's material by nature, not material by amount. So review the board minutes is very logical here, right? Because you might think, okay, just a board approval for $6,000. No, a board approval for CEO. That is more important. You can recalculate the finance cost on the loan. You can recalculate the finance cost on the loan because that's not done by the audit team. You can recalculate the finance cost and ensure the accuracy of the charge, etc. So will you be able to do the answer for director loan? Have you got enough brainstorming on director loan? So this question was very good, right? We had three situations in this question. Inventory, where there was a misstatement of $130,000 and the management was claiming it is recyclable when the auditor was saying it's not. Then in a legal claim, there has to be a provision of $125,000, which individually was immaterial. The lawyer was saying it's probable, so a provision should be recognized, but the management was reluctant to record a provision. Then in the case of a related party transaction, it was material by nature, no disclosure was given, and because no disclosure was given, so it is material by nature, the financial statements are materially misstated. Is everyone clear? Will you be able to wrap up the answer under the four headings? Are you getting the sense of this question? Are you getting what you need to do? So comment on the sufficiency is not a new requirement. Procedures is not a new requirement. Comment on the matters, you must have done so many times in the past and in my previous webinars as well. Comment on the matters. You comment on the materiality, you comment on the accounting treatments mostly. And adjustment to the financial statement. What will be debited and what will be credited? In the case of the loan, it's not the debit and credit, it's the disclosure. So that is it, right? The last part now, the reporting part. Exhibit number 2. Now look at the exhibit number 2 carefully on your screen. It is now the 1st of September. You are wrapping up the audit as a manager. And the audit report on Wedel financial statement for 31st of March is due to be issued in next few days. So you are about to issue the audit report in the next few days. Following discussion with management, they have stated that they're not willing to make any adjustment. So management is not willing to make any adjustment, whether for inventory, whether for legal claim, and whether for disclosures. In relation to the issues outlined in Exhibit 1, they're not making any adjustments. You are now considering the form and content of the report. You are now considering what will be the report. So you need to take the aggregate impact on the report now. Let's take the aggregate impact. Okay, let's discuss the implication for the audit report. 4 marks. Now, in the first part, you will tell the aggregate misstatements. The aggregate misstatements, legal claim plus inventory write-off, because these are the quantitative one, right? Not the qualitative one. We cannot aggregate the qualitative and quantitative together because we can only aggregate the quantitative ones, right? Not the qualitative ones, right? So the aggregate misstatement, legal claim and inventory write-off is $130,000 plus $125,000 is equal to $255,000. We are looking at if you look at the debit side, both the misstatement, debit was the P&L, right? So you were debiting the cost of sales, you were debiting the operating expenses. So if you debit the cost of sale and you debit the operating expenses, will that affect the profit of the company? So currently the operating expenses are understated by $255,000 because $130,000 was a debit to the P&L and $125,000 was a debit to a P&L, right? So the aggregates have been taken. The aggregate misstatement is 130 plus 125, $255,000, which is material to the income and expenses threshold, which is material to the income and inventory threshold of 200,000, but it is immaterial to the assets and liabilities threshold of $800,000. Now, in a reporting question, if something becomes material on one side, it is still considered as material. So in this case, it is becoming material on the basis of income and expenses, but it is not becoming material on the basis of asset and liability. So which will take precedence? Which of them will take precedence? So even if becomes material on one, we will consider it as material. Okay, the threshold for material is 250, sorry, 250. So 255, which is material to the income and expenses threshold of 250, but it is immaterial to the assets and liabilities of 800,000. So which will take prevailing? 255 is material to the income and expenses. This will take prevailing over the other. So it is material if it becomes material on any one factor. Right, all of you? Is everyone clear with the first para I wrote? Any issues with the first para, all of you? Is everyone clear with the first para? Okay. How many marks will I get? I will get 1 mark for aggregation. 1 mark for aggregation because you did a calculation. You did a calculation plus 1 mark for the comment on the materiality, that it is material to income and expenses and it is immaterial to assets and liabilities. So you're fetching 2 marks there, right? Okay, next. Now, once you know the aggregate misstatements on a quantitative basis are material, you write the second paragraph. Further, there is a related party disclosure. There is a related party disclosure which is material by nature and no adjustment has been made for this in the financial statement. So now you bring the qualitative one in the next point. So how many misstatements are there? There are 2 quantitative misstatements of $255,000 plus there is a qualitative misstatement. Can you add the qualitative misstatement? No, because we don't have the value, right? Further, there is a related party disclosure which is material by nature. So we cannot add the disclosure with a debit. But you have wrote a separate point that there is also a disclosure related misstatement which is material by nature and the adjustment has not been made. 1 mark. You come to the last point. Thus, on the basis of the aggregate misstatements exceeding the materiality threshold for income and expenses, the auditor will issue on material basis. The matter is material only and not pervasive. The matter is material only and not pervasive. Because see how much the threshold has increased just by $5,000. The threshold was 250 and it's just exceeded it by $5,000. So we will not consider it as something pervasive. We will consider it as something material. So thus, on the basis of the aggregate misstatement exceeding the materiality threshold for income and expenses, the matter is material only and not pervasive. Because the threshold has been exceeded. The threshold has been because the materiality threshold has been exceeded by just $5,000. It is material, right? Even though it's just exceeded by 5,000, it is still material, but you cannot say this is pervasive on an exceed of 5,000, right? No, normally for pervasive, we need to find the percentages, right? As guided you in the lecture, that if a percentage is more than 60% of the total assets or 60% of the revenue or 60% of the PBT. But in this case, it is very judgmental, right? 5,000 excess, I hope you all agree, is not a very significant surge. So we cannot take a harsh ruling of pervasive here, right? Agree or disagree? 5,000 is a very is a very minor number when you look at the increase over $250,000, right? So is the judgment sound or unsound here? So if it is exceeding by just 5,000 and we say this is pervasive, would be a very wrong judgment, right? So finally, thus the auditor will issue a qualified opinion. Just the auditor will issue a qualified opinion, bracket, the except for opinion. The auditor will mention in the basis of qualified opinion paragraph, the reason and basis for issuing the said opinion, The qualified opinion will lead to a modified audit report, because the examiner was asking us implication for an audit report. So we first tell examiner the opinion and then we tell examiner the report. So opinion leads to report. So look at this last statement, thus a modified audit report. If you miss this point, you're losing 1 mark because the examiner was asking for implication for the report. Now look at the situation on your screen. I have 4 paragraphs, but these 4 paragraphs are giving me more than 4 marks because I already took 2 marks in my first paragraph. So is everyone sound and clear? Right. Thank you so much for confirming that, Darshan, that the $5,000 excess is just 2% of the threshold. So in that case, we cannot take it as pervasive, right? Is everyone sound with how I wrote the answer for implication for the audit report? You have to go in an orderly form. First, you need to do the aggregations where possible. Then if something is material by nature that is not part of the aggregation, you need to comment on that separately. Then you need to conclude whether it is material or material and pervasive. You have to exercise a sound judgment because you have professional marks for judgment. And then you conclude down on the right opinion. If you are concluding down on the right opinion, please assure you mention the basis of opinion and you mention what will be the impact on report to fetch most of your professional marks. Look at the case here. If one student only writes this much, see, if I take this answer from here, Control C, and I wrote my answer here, student 2, and I wrote my answer here. And I say, thus on the basis of the aggregate misstatements exceeding materiality threshold for income, the matter is material. The matter is material only. I'm not telling pervasive. And I'm saying, thus the auditor will issue a qualified opinion, and I wrap up my answer here. Just this much. Look at this student. Now the marker will give you the technical marks because the marker will be happy that you mention material only. The marker will give you technical marks for this. The marker will give you a technical mark for a qualified opinion because you judged that rightly. But when you compare the student to answer, this is a technically sound answer, but you compare this with this answer here, Control C, and you bring it down. Student 1, which is technical plus professional. And you bring it down here. Look at this answer. In this answer, the student is not just telling material, but the student is also telling it's not pervasive and you're justifying why it's not pervasive. So are you giving a sound judgment to the marker that why this is only material and not pervasive? Are you giving the judgment here? Will you fetch professional marks for judgment? And then you say a qualified opinion, and you mention that for a qualified opinion, there has to be a basis of qualified opinion, and the qualified opinion leads to a modified report. Are you fetching the marks for evaluation? You evaluated the situation very well. So are you finding the difference between a student one answer and a student two answer? That is something I mentioned on the day one of the webinar, improving the quality threshold of your answer. If the question is asking for issues, not actions, still write actions. If the question is asking for discuss the ethical issues, question mark. If a student is discussing the ethical issues and simultaneously writing the actions, that is a better answer rather than a student just writing the issues. If a student is writing a qualified opinion, not writing the basis of qualified opinion, not writing a modified report, you are a weak student. So please ensure that over a stretch of these last 4 days, the practice of the questions, the drafting of the answers, the way they were linked to the case studies, I hope you're getting some message out of it. You need to improve upon the quality threshold of the answer. You need to ensure that you do the calculations. Look at these calculations. These are worthy, right? These are worthy to be done. If you just say the aggregate misstatement is $255,000, rather than you show 130 plus 125, that is better. So you have to do something extra, right? How many extra time you have for 1 mark now? 2.44 minutes if you are a student 1. How much time you used to have in the June exams? 1.95 minutes. So 1.95 minutes versus 2.44 minutes. Cannot you write something extra in that time? Cannot you ensure that you do the calculations? Cannot you ensure you write something extra to improve the quality of your answer? So is everyone clear with the nature of the question which came in the question 3 of the mock exam? Are you clear with the first requirement on your screen? Comment on the sufficiency of the evidence. We had verbal evidence, we had written representation as an issue, and in the case of the director loan, we just only checked, we didn't check the board minutes, we didn't check the agreement, we didn't check the recalculation of the finance cost. We just focused on confirming the market rate to the rate on which the loan was offered, and only checking the cash book for the payment made. So there were issues with evidence, right? Then further procedures, then commenting on the matters, primarily the materiality matter and the accounting treatments of IS 37, IS 2, and IS 24, and then the adjustment to the financial statement. So I hope the question is clear to all of you. Right, in the part 1A, you have 16 marks, right? And in 16 marks, you have to do how many things? 4. And how many matters you have in the part 1? 3 matters. And technically for every matter, how many things you have to do? 4. Right, so how would you utilize the 16 marks in the question in the part A is totally up to you. You want to write something more for inventory and less for legal claim. You want to write something more for legal claim and less for director loan. It's totally up to you, but don't leave anything blank. Is everyone clear with this? So let's go back to the Word file. Let's do a final analysis of things we have gone with in this webinar. Director loan, you will do yourself, and I will save the answer from the practice platform and share that with you rather than bringing the answer to my Word file. I will share the PDF of the answer I wrote on the practice platform. That will be better. Okay, let's take some quick summaries. I'm not repeating something of the approach you should take in the last 10 days or 12 days that has already been spelled out, but I just want to ensure that my major concern is writing the answer. Sorry, just 1 minute. The critical aspects you should not miss in your upcoming exams. The critical aspects you should not miss in your upcoming exams. That is what I want to discuss with you for the next 10 minutes before wrapping things up. Number one, listen to me carefully. I believe the very first thing is to ensure that you are reading the information on the right-hand panel of the screen first, right? And every day I guided you about that. I hope you agree with me. Let me show you again. In the exam, what will you do first? You will read the information on the right panel first. Agree, disagree? Step number one, read the information on the right panel first. Just become familiar with who you are, what is the name of the client, what is the year end of the client, what is the name of the audit firm, is any specific information given by the examiner about first year audit, materiality level, etc. So the information on the right should be read as quickly as possible before you move to the left panel. And then you will be spending the entire time on the left panel, right? Are you clear with this? So the first thing, read the right panel of the screen, the practice platform screen, right? The practice platform screen first. After this, open the word processor and the requirements together, two windows on the screen. Copy the requirements on the word processor and arrange the requirements in a logical manner by ensuring the breaks and segregations within each requirement. Look for the comma and the and in examiner requirement. Also, look out for the signpost if given by examiner, that is not to do something, So if the examiner is saying not to do something, please don't do that. Mostly we find this in the question number 1, right? Also look at the signpost if given by the examiner, that is not to do something as part of a note given under requirement, So read the requirements carefully, arrange them on the word processor very carefully, because that would be helping you starting to read the exhibits. Be sure which exhibit is to be read for which requirement. In section B, for each requirement, there is one specific exhibit. In section B, right? Requirement A, exhibit 1. Requirement B, exhibit 2. Requirement C, exhibit 3. So in section B, examiner do give you one exhibit for one requirement. That's the beauty of the section B questions, right? However, in the section A, multiple exhibits are to be used for audit risk or risk of material misstatements or business risk. So multiple exhibits are to be used for risk assessment in the question number 1. However, further, even in question 1, examiner do refer to specific exhibits for other requirements. For example, procedures. For example, ethical issues. For example, climate risk. So there might be certain exhibits the examiner is even referring to in the question number 1, but mostly the risk requirement, we need to relate that with multiple exhibits. So be sure of which exhibit to connect with which requirement. This is all part of the reading and planning time, right? Then read the case, copy important information from the case in the word processor, under each requirement. You have already arranged. So you have arranged the requirements, right, on the word processor. Now, when you're reading the exhibit 1, you can copy the information from the exhibit 1 in the requirement A. You can copy the information from exhibit 2 in the requirement B. So then read the case, copy important information from the case in the word processor under each requirement you have already arranged. Now that's your reading and planning time by the point number 6. Now, once you have read the exhibits, you have copy pasted things under the requirements. I hope I demonstrated that on my day 2, day 3, and day 4, that while I was reading, I keep copying information from exhibits to the word processor. Now then you start writing the answer. Finally, once you read and you copied information from exhibits to word processor and your reading time is over, now start to use the copied information in the word processor to convert to a good answer by rephrasing the copied information intelligently. Is that clear? The point number 7 to all of you? Is the point number 7 clear to all of you? Right? This is important. And the final one, when writing the answer, ensure you are not missing the checklist. You're not missing the checklist for professional marks as given to you on day 1 of the webinar. Certain important do's of the professional marks are as follow. Number 1, comment and calculate materiality where possible. This is critical. Calculate calculations, trends, ratios where possible. Do them and involve them in your answer, and involve them in your answer. Yesterday, in the question 2, we did calculated the finance cost, right? We did recalculated the finance cost. So wherever possible, we thought the finance cost can be recalculated. The values were given. We used the value to recalculate the finance cost. Yes, challenge the opinions of management. Just like today or yesterday, management assumptions. Challenge the opinions of the management assumptions, basis, viewpoints. Be critical of investigating Be critical of investigating anything wrong in management statements. Write a case-specific answer. The more you blend the case, the more you blend the case with, the more you blend the answer with the case, the better prospects you have of scoring most of the 20 professional marks. Give a clear judgment, give a clear judgment for impact on report, give a clear judgment for impact on report, or be clear with explaining the basis of your judgment wherever you use it in the paper. Don't lose the communication mark in question number 1. Don't lose the communication mark in question 1 as guided on the day 2 of the webinar. There are 4 marks to grab out of 10 in question 1 for this. That's important, right? So there is so much you can do. There's a big checklist which was given on the day 1. I cannot just put that here, but this is just some more important things out of that checklist which you can reinforce, you can reassure, and you can bring out a best answer. The final thing which I'm missing out here, which I should be giving you, you have extra time to write each technical mark, So do justice with improving your answer quality. Is that clear? Do justice, right? Examiner would be very unhappy with you if still you are writing an answer which you used to write in 1.95 minutes per mark. Then what's the difference? You have 2.44 minutes per mark, and you're still writing an answer which is equivalent to an answer of 1.95 minutes per mark. So I hope you do the justice. I have given you videos on professional skills on my YouTube channel, and if you are my registered student on the portal, extra videos as well. I've given you guidance on professional marks in the webinar. I've tried drafting the answers in the webinar so to give you a better idea how you read, how you plan. I've given you the time management. I've given you the checklist. I've given you the study planner for 14 days, which have now become like 11 days. I have also given you the articles to read. I have given you all the necessary resources on the new current issue, the new articles, the change of the terminology, which is the international standards on quality management instead of international standard on quality control. So every possible updations have been given. Every possible guidance has been given. Now it's about you to implement them. It's about you to reinforce them. Because at the end of the day, the success, to be successful lies with you. You have to do efforts for it. And any one of you who do it will be successful. So aim at success, believe in yourself, believe you can do it. You still have like 11 days remaining. Plan for them. And ensure you practice a lot. Ensure you are putting the emphasis on the professional marks. Any student who gains 15 out of 20 professional marks, you are in a better chance to surpass the 50 barrier very easily. So is that clear to all of you? I'll be sharing the resources, what we have discussed on the day 4. I'm not just repeating my tips and techniques because that was put on the day 1 of the webinar. So I'm not just wasting time on that because the time is precious for all of you. And I believe you should all be focused on studies now. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed these webinars. I hope you got some lessons and learnings some guidance from these 4 days of the webinar, which was stretched on approximately 12 hours. I hope you got some benefit out of it, right? It was very nice to have you on board in these live webinars, interacting with you, taking on your questions. And you still have the option, right, of putting questions on the WhatsApp group, because up to the day of exam, I try to interact as much as possible with all of you. So I hope you benefited from them. If you can just give me a quick feedback before I just say you goodbye and wind up the day 4 and the final day of the webinar. Yes, you should do the question 1 first, ideally, unless and until you find something strange in question number 1, then you can start with section B. But it is good to start question 1 first. Okay, thank you so much for that feedback, all of you. It was very good to interact with all of you. Very nice looking at you every day in the live session. So I wish you all success. I wish you all the best of luck. And my prayers, my well wishes are with all my students who are appearing for AAA September 22 exam. Honestly, as a tutor, you want every student to pass, but you need to understand the challenge of the low pass rates. So it's humanly impossible that every one of you pass. But you need to understand that if you are failing, there is some flaws in your preparation. There's some flaws in your strategies, right? So as a tutor, I want 100 out of 100 students to pass, because I've given the guidance to all of you. Whatever I've taught was equal for all of you, unbiased. But how you take it is different. Now, a student A will take my lecture differently, student B will take my lecture differently, student C will take my lecture differently. How you make your notes, how you organize yourself, that counts. My lecture is one for all. And how you listen, how you respond, how you write, how you implement is different from each one of you, right? So the results will vary. Some of you will have results in 50s, some in 60s, some in 70s. Some might even struggle to pass. So be prepared for the challenge, right? And aim for the best in the upcoming exams. 20 professional marks for the first time. If you try making the best utilization of that, the marker will be happy. And there can be an uplift in the passing rates. There can be an uplift in the passing ratio from 31% to perhaps 40%. I foresee the passing rates improving if you start putting emphasis on the 20 professional marks. Thank you so much, all of you. Will not take much of your time because I want you to sit down and study. Every minute is crucial. Thank you so much, all of you. This is your tutor, Kashif Kamran, signing off not just from the 4th day of the webinar, but also this is the end of the webinar. And I wish you success in your September exams. Take care. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.